us for our program tonight. My name is Lisa Kelly. I'm the manager for adult programming and outreach at the library. Welcome. Thank you for coming out on a chilly evening. Tonight we'll be learning about the Courtless Divorce presented by Michael Heath. I just want to ask you please at this point to silence your cell phones so we don't interrupt the program, and to let you know there is a restroom right over here if you need one. We have a flyer on the table and some water bottles. If you'd like a water bottle, I can bring you one for the program. And please take a flyer for the rest of our February events. We still have a combination of in-person and Zoom programming going on each month. We have a lot planned for Black History Month and for Women's History Month in March. We're also showing movies in our movie theater now regularly, which I can open up and show you after the program. So we have usually 4 or 5 every month. And I invite you to follow us on social media and also sign up for our monthly events newsletter. You can find the link to do that either on our Facebook page or on our website. And you'll get a wonderful newsletter at the start of each month with all of our programs and upcoming events. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Heath. He is an author who lives in Monmouth Beach and has written a few books. He's done a children's series. He did a book about animal rescue, a novel for new readers, new adult readers. We had a program with Michael in the fall, and I brought him back again for this is a more serious topic, nonfiction, if you will, and he's going to tell us how to use mediators and to avoid the courts while going through a divorce. So, Michael, thank you for being with us tonight. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you,
Thank
Lisa,
you.
so much. Well, thanks everyone for being here this evening. I do appreciate it. And I'm the author of the Courtless Divorce, and also have a website, thecourtlessdivorce.com. And the thesis behind for the book, The Courtless Divorce, is really to make the public aware that there are alternatives to divorce litigation. Mostly mediation and collaborative law, but there are other vehicles that you can use to help bring along the divorce without going into court, such as arbitration or do-it-yourself / pro se type of divorce. But I'm going to speak mostly about mediation and collaborative law in general terms, not to, this way I don't bore anybody or put anybody to sleep, but divorce is it's an $11 billion industry, and $11 billion is spent on divorces annually. So it's really a very, very big area, and it's a lot of people spending a lot of money, and a lot of people losing a lot of money, and a lot of animosity is caused during divorces. So it's, in a lot of times, people are really angry at each other, but when they're going through the divorce, it actually gets a lot worse. So the purpose of my book, again, is to really see, is an attempt to try to lessen that, lessen the cost, and lessen the animosity. And so mediation, a lot of people know what it is, or maybe a lot of people have a fuzzy notion of what mediation is, but what a mediation is, it's an effort to come to an agreement between two disputing parties using a neutral third party. So in mediation, in divorce mediation, you would have the husband and the wife, and you would have a neutral third party, helping the two parties come to an agreement. Now that differs dramatically from litigation, where litigation is an adversarial model, where it's, the two sides are fighting each other, and it's technically a win-lose proposition. One side's trying to win, and both sides are trying to win, hoping that the other side's going to lose. So it's really what I would call either a win-lose model or a lose-lose model, because in divorce litigation, often the couple ends up broke and very, very mad at each other. So there's no winners other than the lawyers. So I'm sorry.
Just a quick question to clarify in my mind. Does a litigator have to be an attorney, but a mediator does not need to be an attorney?
That's a really good question. In litigation, that is correct. They are attorneys, absolutely.
Both mediator and
No,
litigator?
but a mediator can either be, to be a divorce mediator, you do not have to be an attorney, but there's a lot of lawyers who are mediators. And a lot of times with mediation, you want to be a little bit careful when you're choosing a mediator. You would want to, I'm going to go through a list of questions you're going to want to ask, but just off the top of my head, with mediators, you want to be careful that one, you want to pick a mediator who does divorce mediation. Because there's a lot of mediators out there, and you might find a mediator who will do a divorce, or has done a divorce before. That's probably not your first choice. You want somebody who sort of specializes in divorce and really knows the law. Now, mediators are really not supposed to dispense legal advice. Even if they are a lawyer, they're not really supposed to be doing that because they're supposed to be neutral, but they are allowed to give information. So a mediator can, one, be somebody who does not have a law degree and just does mediation. It could be a lawyer who does maybe both litigation and mediation. There again, you want to be a little more careful, because if you have a litigator who's always doing litigation and then also does some mediation, it's hard for them to switch hats real easily. So really, you end up really getting a mediator who really thinks like a litigator. And you really want, in mediation, to really have that, what they call alternative dispute resolution mindset, where you're really trying to come to solutions. So it's a very solution-based type of model. So you want a mediator who really, really believes in it and really lives it and does it. So like I said, there's a lot of litigators out there that do mediation. There are, and having a mediator who's a lawyer is not necessarily a bad thing, because they do know the law, so that's a benefit. That's a real benefit. But you do want to have one who you really feel comfortable is really on board with the whole mediation concept, because if they're just thinking like a litigator, it's really not going to work out probably, And then there's another type of method, other than mediation, that's even less well known, but is also very good, is collaborative law. And what collaborative law is, it's not a three-way meeting like a mediation is, with a mediator, neutral mediator, and a husband and wife. With collaborative law, it's the husband and wife, and both of them are represented by a lawyer in that meeting. So it's a four-way meeting. Now, the collaborative lawyers are, one, they're trained in collaborative law. They're trained in solution-based model, where they're actually not fighting it out, but they're really trying to come to solutions. And two, they actually sign an agreement beforehand saying that if the meetings do not come to a successful conclusion and divorce, they agree that they will not represent their client in litigation. And the reason for that is because in collaborative law, they want to have it where there's an incentive for the collaborative lawyers to come to a successful conclusion. They don't want the collaborative lawyers to say to themselves, you know what, if this doesn't work out, then we'll just go to litigation and we'll do that. So they don't want that. They want to have it where there's that incentive for them to come to a conclusion. So the reason maybe somebody, now you might be saying to yourself, well, why would you want to hire a lawyer? granted, with collaborative law, it is more expensive than mediation, but it's usually always way less expensive than litigation. Because there again, there's a spirit of working together. And the reason people might want to go with the collaborative law way is because maybe, say somebody is, say I'm married and my wife is, she's just very tough and she's just very strong-willed, and I'm like Casper Milquetoast, and I'm kind of wimpy and I'm not really that good at doing the negotiations. Now in mediation, of course, mediators are trained to, let's say, be aware of an imbalance of power, and to really make sure that that it's equal. But if there's a real big imbalance of power, people might say, something, I'd just rather have a representative. So with collaborative law, at least you have somebody on your side there working together and helping bring it to a conclusion. Now, there are times that maybe during the meetings that it's getting a little heated and what have you, and maybe your lawyer and the spouse and their lawyer might leave the room and want to discuss something, like a little sidebar conference and stuff like that. And that's all legit, that's all legit. But again, the whole spirit of collaborative law is also to come to a conclusion. Like I said before, with litigation is adversarial. It's set up as adversarial. And the reason the tendency for people to, if they're going to get a divorce and run out and get a lawyer is just because that's just the way it's been for many years. People have just always done it. And many years ago, that was really the only solution. If you were fighting with your spouse and you wanted to get a divorce, you got a lawyer, you both got lawyers, and you went to court and you fought it out, or you negotiated it before you got to court. But it's a very adversarial, it's very adversarial, and it also causes a lot of just bad will. Now, there's a lot of good litigators out there, of course, but there's also a lot of litigators out there that are not as honest and has the client's best interest at heart all the time. Because the problem with divorce, of course, there's a lot of anger usually, and because there's anger, there's very often the couple is not thinking rationally. So they're willing to accept what their lawyer tells them. And very often the lawyers will say, don't talk to the other side at all, just talk to me. And then what happens is they're adding gasoline to already to a bad situation as it is. And they'll say, they sent us this letter and we're going to do this and we're going to go after them, and I don't like what they're doing. We're going to do this, and so it really causes all this animosity. But of course, what that does is that it just increases the bills, and it just increases bad will between the couple, and it just things can get worse and worse. So what happens is the couples, they end up losing a lot of money, but also with the animosity, the animosity causes just the animosity can last for literally for a lifetime. And the thing is, like when there's a couple and they have kids and all, even when you get divorced, there's still things that are going to happen. There's still going to be weddings. There's still going to be grandkids. There's going to be baptisms. There's going to be things in the future. So what's the point of having all this bad will, where if you're going through the mediation process or you're going through the collaborative law process, people will often feel that by working together and working it out, that they end up with a much better solution, both financially and with a lot less animosity. And they end up getting more of what they want, because with mediation and collaborative law, the couple is really the ones making the decisions. I mean, you have people helping you, but it's really you're coming up with solutions, and the mediator and the collaborative lawyers are just guiding you towards a better solution. So what happens is that the couple is much more in control of their future, where in litigation you're sort of surrendering your future to a lawyer who's kind of, they're the ones in control of everything. And what often happens is that the litigators, they know exactly, they have intimate knowledge of everything that you own. They know how much money you have, they know what you own and everything like that. And what happens is the divorce keeps going and going until there's less money and less money and less money. And then when there's just about no money left, the lawyers see, they know that there's not going to be any money left to pay, so they'll say, well, we've got to come to an agreement because you're not going to be able to pay us anymore. So then the couple ends up with a result that they never wanted, but yet they spent all this money and lost all this money. So I think I've kind of beaten down the mediation and collaborative law thing, but I think it's, you can see where it really does have its advantages. Again, because people have control of their future, they're working together, and there's a lot less animosity and there's a lot less cost financially. Now, there's a lot of people that will always tell me, they'll say, there's no way that my husband and I could ever do that. We're fighting, there's just no way. Well, I say, well, naturally, if you're getting divorced, you're fighting. So, that's just a given, okay? So that's not something new. And then second of all, I'll say, well, listen, you planned a wedding together, you bought a house together, you maybe had a business together, you raised children together. So if you're going to get divorced, why don't you do that together? So, it might sound like kind of weird that, people are working together to do their divorce, but when it really comes to their money and their future and their child custody, it's very often much better if they're doing it than allowing somebody else to do it. So and then I also just say, listen, you might say that you could never do it, but people do it all the time. There's people doing mediation all the time, and there's people doing collaborative law all the time. So if you guys do it, it's not something that's new. People have done it for a long, long time and really have been successful with it. So it's just it's just a matter of people working together and getting the right results. There are times when collaborative law or mediation won't work, definitely. And so I'll just go through a quick list. If there's serious domestic violence in the relationship, you definitely want to get a traditional family lawyer. I wouldn't suggest going with mediation, because there you might have to actually get the authorities involved. If somebody's getting beat up or there's a threat of getting beaten up or getting hurt, you really want to have a lawyer who's on your side and not really try to go the mediation route. If there's the threat of absconding with the children, which it does happen, especially with foreigners. They can take their kids to Russia or to the Middle East or whatever like that. If there's a threat like that, definitely do not do the mediation or the collaborative law way. You definitely want to have a lawyer with you on your side, and because there again you might have to get the authorities involved. Another one, the same fault for the same reason, dispensation of assets. So if either the husband or the wife is stealing money or taking money away or taking assets, you really want to you really do want to have a traditional lawyer on your side, because if the money's gone, even a good judge is not going to be able to really do anything for you. Once the money's gone, it's gone. So you really would want to get a lawyer for that. And another obvious one would be like substance abuse, or if there's mental health issues, you probably do want to get a regular lawyer. And then the last one would be, which is a common one, would be what I call contrarian position, where if one side absolutely refuses or doesn't want to do it, then you can't do it. To do mediation or collaborative law, you really have to have both spouses on board to do it. They have to both agree to it. Now, if they really think that it's a stupid idea, and but you really think you want to try doing it, one, tell them to buy my book. My book, honestly, I'm not trying to sell the book so much, but it's an easy read, and it just really kind of lays it out. Or you can just go online, and there's a lot of websites out there about collaborative law and about mediation, and then maybe when they read more about it, they'll understand why it makes a lot more sense. Another thing that you could possibly, another way to get divorced would be like arbitration is another way. It's not as commonly used, but if you have like arbitration is sometimes good, especially if you have, like, let's say, a business and it's really there's a lot of issues about how to split up the business. Maybe using an arbitrator is a good thing, because arbitration works. It sort of works like a court, and it is, you can have binding or non-binding, but it's almost always binding. Then the arbitrator is usually always like a former judge or retired judge, so they really know the court system, of course. So the advantage of arbitration is that it's definitely more casual than the court system. 2, it's out of the public eye. 3, you have a lawyer who really knows the law, and what he says goes. So I mean, it's sort of like, it's a little more cut and dry. I mean, when he gives his answer, then you have to live with it. So that's often a good thing. And then there's another way that you can get divorced. It's called pro se, or some people call it do-it-yourself divorce. Well, do-it-yourself divorce would really be just going out to the courthouse and getting the documents and filling out the documents yourself and all. And I would only recommend doing that if it was really like there was just nothing going on with the marriage, like just a young couple, and they just get married and they've been married for a year, and now they just realized they made a mistake, and you could just go out to the courts and get the documents. But even with that, I would always recommend at least showing the documents to a lawyer first, because if you make a mistake, you're going to have to live with it. So it's always better to just at least have a lawyer look at it. And then the other one is what they call pro se, which is basically the same thing. But sometimes if you're driving on the highway and you see these neon signs, get divorced for $199. Well, you go there, and they're the same thing. They have the documents, but they kind of help you fill them out, and they kind of, so it's like a step above really going out to the courthouse and literally doing everything by yourself. But if somebody was really broke and had to do it all by themselves, a lot of times if you do go out to the courthouse, a lot of times there is somebody at the courthouse that can help you a little bit. Not all courthouses do that, but some of them do. Some of them will maybe have an office with somebody who might give you a little bit of instruction on it. So, so those are the things that is most important with regard to mediation and collaborative law. I've kind of gone through the do-it-yourself, and let me see if there's anything else here. Like we were talked about in the beginning, if you're looking to get a mediator, some things you may want to consider. And I have these all listed in my book that I'm going to give you. Does the mediator have any training? Because really almost anybody can just put a sign on the door and say they're a mediator. You can do mediation for anything. Mediation for the sale of something, or there was a dispute about a sale or something like that. So you can have a mediator. So you really want to know, does this mediator really have any training at all in divorce? How long have they been doing it? How long have they practiced in divorce mediation? Everybody has to start somewhere. And sometimes maybe getting somebody real new is not such a bad thing. Maybe the cost is going to be less. They're going to be really eager and very ambitious to really do a good job. So you just want to find out how much experience they have. You may want to ask how many cases they've done and how successful they've been. You can ask the mediator if they have any references. And if they're most likely not going to give you a list of their clients. That would be that's personal information for their clients. But they may have a lawyer friend that can kind of vouch for them, or a judge that can vouch for them, or somebody like that. So they ask them, maybe a therapist, somebody who can vouch for them. You can ask them what their style is. They might say, again, like if they were a past judge, if they're a mediator and now they're a judge, you may want to be a little careful with that, only because that can be good because they really know the law. That's a good thing. But also, judges are usually they're used to calling the shots. So mediation is not for the mediator to call the shots. The mediator is there to help the two couple, them to control everything, and then they can then make their own decisions. So if a judge is used to like just kind of handing out orders all the time, he might not be the best mediator. Where also somebody who is kind of, if somebody kind of comes across as very too nicey nice and sort of maybe weak-willed and stuff like that, they might not be a good mediator either, because you do want to have somebody who can kind of control the situation. You don't want to have somebody who's going to get walked all over. So you just want to kind of see what their personality is. You want to ask what their fee structure is. If, that's a good idea. Is there a retainer? Do they charge by the hour? You may want to shop around a little bit. Where the session is going to be. Another beautiful thing about mediation is that it's out of the public eye. So you're not in a courthouse where anybody. If you go to divorce court, anybody, it's a public arena. People can come in. So in mediation, it's usually done at the mediator's office, but they may rent an office or whatever. So you just want to find out where it's going to be and if they're available when you're available. So if you're working nights or your husband's working nights and if they can only do it at night, then of course that mediator wouldn't work for you. And what is the mediator's specialty? Again, like I was saying before, if they're usually doing mediation in whatever kind of disputes over business or something like that, but oh yeah, I can also do a divorce, that might not be your best bet. You want somebody who really kind of does divorce and really knows the law. And so those are the things. And then you had a question, sure.
Would the mediator go into court with the husband or wife? Do they accompany the subjects?
Yeah, they wouldn't do that because they're not representing the couple. So what they may do is they may be skilled enough to come up with the divorce agreement. So they may write it up, okay? And then when they bring it into court, and then the judge would look at it, and as long as it looked okay, then he would give it the rubber stamp. It's also a lot of times recommended that if you go through mediation and everything is really good, they often recommend that it doesn't hurt for each spouse to take that divorce agreement and show it to a lawyer. It's not going to be real expensive to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Just having them look at it, because there again, whatever you agree to, you're going to live with. So a lawyer might look at it and say, something, everything looks really good, but I don't like the way that this is written right here, and this could really come back and haunt you a few years in that, when if there's, for whatever reason, when your son goes away to college, you're on the hook for all the tuition, and she's not. So that's the one thing I just don't like about this. So you do want to protect yourself that way. And then if the two lawyers sign off on it, when they go to court, then it's pretty much a formality. But again, the mediator wouldn't go to court.
Would a law firm hire a mediator or mediators to handle the court cases that they may be too involved in for a lesser fee?
That's a
Yet
real, yeah.
Working for a law firm?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. And the answer is yes. The mediation that I'm really kind of promoting here is for people to hire a mediator or hire collaborative lawyers before they even file for a divorce. So I always tell people that if you're really thinking about doing mediation, do not run to a lawyer and file for divorce, because once you file for divorce with a litigator, it's sort of like the train has left the station and that's where you are. So this type of mediation that I'm talking about is prior to going to court, prior to even talking to a litigator. It's just to do it ahead of time. Now what happens a lot of times, and what people say, like you're right, and people say to me all the time, oh, we used mediation. But what happened was they hired litigators, So they had to pay a retainer, they got litigators, they're fighting it out, and then the judge says, you know what, I want this couple to go to mediation. So that's like what they call court-mandated mediation. So yeah, they're doing mediation, and it will save them money rather than to continue to fight it out into litigation. But still, that's kind of the roundabout way. I'd rather see people go to mediation before they even hire a lawyer. Yeah.
So Michael, you
Sure.
would either have a mediator, which is one person who sort of helps the two parties come to an agreement, or collaborative is each side gets to bring in someone for them.
Their own collaborative lawyer.
And
right.
then the other thing is arbitration, is that one person?
That would be one person.
And that's like, what if they decide this, the arbitrator says this is what you need to do, and you don't like that, can you say, I don't want that, and then take another route?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Usually people don't go to arbitration to do the whole divorce, usually. What happens with arbitration, maybe it could happen even in mediation, that both sides agree on everything. Everything's looking really good, but they're at an impasse because the couple owns a business, and maybe the one spouse says, I want to just sell the business and get away from this thing and get my money, and I want to leave, And then the husband might say, I want to keep the business because this is the only business I know, and I'm not going to be able to make as much money someplace else. So I think that we should keep the business. And so so on that one issue, sometimes the medium might say, listen, why don't you go to an arbitrator, have the arbitrator listen to both sides, and then come up with a solution. He's going to come up with a solution and say, and then whatever it is you're going to have to live with. Most of the time, it's binding. So in that case, when that arbitrator, who's usually a former judge, says, you got to sell the business, that's it. And the business has to get sold and you have to split it up 50-50. Then that you have to live with.
Or it might be a buyout. One person could buy the
Oh,
other.
yeah. I mean, maybe the arbitrator would suggest doing that, but whatever he comes up with, it's not going to, there's going to be an answer almost every time. Now, in much rarer cases, you could have a non-binding where you go to arbitration and you don't have to live with it. Maybe you want to go through arbitration to see what a judge would come up with. You want to see what maybe if you own a business that's, I'm just making up, that's worth $5 million, and you say, listen, let's just go to arbitration, make it non-binding, and we'll present our cases and see what the judge comes back with. And then if you don't like what he comes back with, you don't have to live with it because it's non-binding. It's really more informative. You just wanted to see what was going to happen. So, and it does happen. I mean, I read about it, something here in Long Branch where they had that arbitration, and it was non-binding, and because both sides wanted to see they wanted to get an idea what was going to happen. But again, in divorce, it would be pretty rare that would happen. It would mostly be binding. So anyway, this is, I think I've kind of gone through a lot of things without going into too many details, which I'm not a lawyer, so it's probably good that I'm not going into too many details. Another solution would be, sometimes it happens, which is, of course is an annulment. So like a young couple, maybe they get married and 3 months later they realize they were, this was just we were at a party, we were drinking, we were in Las Vegas, we went and got married. So you can go to a lawyer, or you can go to a judge, and usually you'd want to have a lawyer who knows the court system, but go to a judge, and the judge would say, you know what, this marriage actually never happened, and so then they would just they would just put it down.
Is there still common law that after X number of years living together,
Yeah,
were considered a married couple, then if you wanted to split up, do you still have to go through court
There are states that have that. I don't think New Jersey has it.
No,
Maybe-
I've
maybe
always
it's-
heard New Jersey doesn't have common law.
They used to have it.
They
Yeah.
used to.
Maybe they had it one time, yeah. I think down south, there's some states down there, but, if, you do have to meet certain criteria, like you have to be, like, living with each other, you have to be presenting each other, basically. Like, people have to believe that you are husband and wife, and so, it has to be, like, almost like it really was a marriage, but in that case, then it is considered common law, and then you would fall under the laws of being a married person. So if you did decide to, sell the house, then you'd have to split it up, or if you want to
What
leave.
happens in a case when there is no common law bit, and they've been living together, they had kids, they grew up and all that stuff, what happens to the assets if they ever decide to divorce?
Yeah, I mean, that is really, that's an issue, that really is an issue, yeah.
There would be an issue,
Yeah, that would be an issue, yeah, I mean, it would be an issue, I mean,
no matter, even if they're together 30, 40 years.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't really know, yeah, I mean, if it was 30, yeah, I mean,
I know a couple.
yeah. I know, like, in the, like the gay community, now that they have gay marriage, they feel in some ways more protected, because now when they can get married, they do have the protections of, of being married and that, and they get divorced too, although they're getting divorced at a lower rate, because the problem is, because with gay couples, they were together for so long, not being married, so then when they did get married, it was like no big deal, it wasn't like, so there was so many people that were, like I said, were together for so many years, so.
What about after you go through mediation or collaborative discussions, then they come up with a divorce agreement and you've each had an attorney look it over, then what do? You just take it and file it at court?
You would just file it at court, and you would almost certainly have to go to, when I say the courtless divorce, it's like 98% courtless in the sense that at that point, you usually do have to show up at court, and both the husband and wife both have to be there, and they both have to say, yeah, I do want to get, this is, this is, we agreed to this, and, this is, I know what's going on, and then he'll say, okay, then it's done, But, it's, the sad thing about the, divorce is, it's a tragedy. I mean, there's no question it's a tragedy. And very often, when people get divorced, one of the biggest problems for doing mediation collaborative law is that usually one side doesn't want the divorce. It's very often one wants a divorce, but the other one doesn't. But the truth is, if one person wants to get a divorce, then you can get the divorce because it's you can't stop it. I mean, it just happens. And
Is that or they're gonna kill each other?
yeah, but it's like, yeah, so it's unfortunate, but it does happen. What happens though too, once in a while, and I have wrote little blogs about it, it does happen ironically, because mediation and collaborative law can sometimes be so successful, and people can start working out their issues. Now, granted, it's not marriage counseling, it should never be used as a substitute to marriage counseling, but it does happen where people are starting to work out their issues, and they finally say, something, if we're working them out, let's just keep working them out, and we're going to drop it. And so then sometimes it happens. It's they'll end up not getting divorced, which is then a beautiful thing. The other thing is too is that I forget what I was going to say. Well, anyway, it's So anyway, it happens. It does happen where people don't end up not getting divorced and just go on. Another, to be fully honest, a disadvantage of mediation and collaborative law is that if you do try it and it doesn't work out, then you have spent some money, and then you're going to have to get a litigator, and then you have to start from the beginning. That is an advantage. I mean, a disadvantage. So you do kind of want to go into the mediation and collaborative law with a sense that you're going to be able to succeed with it. So.
Michael, do you have any ballpark figures, like typical litigated divorce versus going the other route?
Absolutely. I mean, in the most general terms, you know, from what I've read, I mean, if you look at the average divorce will cost a couple $20,000. The average divorce for, an average litigated divorce is $20,000. The average mediated divorce is $5,000. And a collaborative law divorce would probably be more like $8,000 or $9,000. So
That's per side or total?
total.
Total.
So, you know, if you do the mediation route, there's a good chance you're only gonna be spending a quarter of what you would normally pay in a litigated divorce. Plus, you'll also probably leave the mediation or the collaborative law with a sense of accomplishment, because the couple is the ones who have actually created this agreement, so there is a sense of accomplishment and a sense of getting along better. Where in litigation, and a lot of it thanks to the lawyers, there's just a huge amount of animosity at the end of the divorce, and you hear it all the time. People say, like, well, I'm not gonna go to that wedding if my ex is gonna be there, because there's gonna be trouble. So people end up missing out on a lot, and it's bad for the kids and everything like that. So.
I guess with litigation, there's usually a winner and a loser.
Correct.
In mediation, you're hoping more for a win-win.
Win-win, yeah. So in litigation, it's really set up as a win-loss model. You know, there's it's almost a boxing match. You know, it's supposed to, you know, it's fighting it out. But often we say it's also, so it's a win-loss model, but it's also a lot of times a lose-lose model, because at the end, you know, if you're both hating each other and you're broke, then who could claim to be the winner? Nobody could even be claimed the winner. So that's it. So I mean, if someday I'm really successful with this, what I really would love to be able to do is really change the mindset of people in the United States that there is mediation and collaborative law, because I don't think people think that way at all. I think people, when they get when they're in a, you know, they're considering to get a divorce and they're really unhappy, and for whatever reason, maybe it's their fault or their spouse's fault. Usually it's a little bit of both, I'm sure. That they run out and they go out and they hire a lawyer and they pay a retainer, and so then the other spouse hires a lawyer and pays a retainer, and then they say, don't speak to each other, we'll handle everything. Well, you know, just talk to me. And then they start with discovery and depositions and subpoenas, maybe subpoenas, but depositions and letters, and you know, every phone call costs you money. I mean, you know, you talk to your lawyer on the phone for 5 minutes. I remember my lawyer used to call me, you know, the dopiest thing, but then it cost me 20 minutes, even though I spoke for 3 minutes, just to ask a question, and then those are all billable hours. So, you know, that's the rough part of litigation. But like I said, there's times when you have to have a litigator. You know, so it's
Is there discovery in mediation or the collaborative process?
not nearly what there is. No, it really isn't. I mean, it's, you know, it really isn't discovery. Yeah, I mean, you do have to fill out forms and stuff like that, but it's not. First of all, you're working together, so you really you're presenting, you know, the information together. But there really isn't discovery like you do when you have litigation at all. No, there isn't. And then the other advantage of mediation is that sometimes you have to hire a specialist, maybe somebody who specializes in child custody, somebody who's maybe a psychologist, or somebody who's a CPA, or somebody who's good at, you know, an expert at selling business. Well, in litigation, both sides will hire their own professionals. So it's 2 CPAs and 2 psychologists and 2 everything. But in mediation and collaborative law, because you're working together, and this is like, it's not really a case where you're working against each other, you're working together, you only hire 1 child psychologist, you only hire 1 CPA. So that's another way that you can save a lot. There's a big savings. So that you don't have discovery the way you have in litigation at all. And then as far as professionals, you only hire 1 as opposed to 2.
But you do still have to bring to the table all of your financial information. So you sort of have to trust
Yeah, you
that
would, I
they're
mean, you
being
would.
honest.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, there's a sense of trust. I mean, the mediator's gonna wanna have that kind of information because you're gonna be talking about it. You're gonna be talking about how is the pension gonna be split up? How is the bank account gonna be split up? So that kind of information you definitely would bring. But you're, in a sense, bringing it together. It's not like, I'm gonna have my file and you're gonna have your file. You're just working on it together. And it's a lot less discovery. There's a lot less wanting to know what the other side is up to type of thing.
I don't know if I'm going in the right direction, but it sounds to me that a small law firm, 2 or 3 attorneys, would make very good use of having a mediator on staff to tie them up, to not tie up their time and get the basics done, then hand it to them to go to court. But the mediator, of course, would have to be paid what he values himself at. Do mediators work that way only for like ABC law firm?
Yeah, I don't,
Or
they
is that
probably do.
separate?
Yeah,
It's more like a psychologist or a psychiatrist. This is what I do and I don't want anybody else to bother me about it.
yeah. There's probably law firms that do have mediators that they know, maybe that they use. But I also find that most law firms have their own, like a lot of the lawyers are also, they claim to be
Getting lawyers
mediators.
that are doing this.
Yeah,
that
they're doing
basically
like
work,
litigation, they're doing mediation, so they'll offer that.
Okay.
It's, or, if, it's litigators that will, litigators definitely that would do mediation and all. And there again, you just wanna be careful, if they're real pro litigators and they're just doing mediation because they feel they have to do it, they're not gonna be good at it at all, because they don't believe in the model. You really wanna have somebody who really believes in the whole solutions-based approach, rather than that adversarial approach. And litigators, they just live on they live on that whole fighting and that whole, that's, a lot of lawyers, divorce lawyers, they don't like mediation because, even when they do it, they get paid a lot less.
Yeah.
So they're not real
It's a loss of money.
they're not drawn to it as much, they'd rather litigate a case.
Right.
Well, I hope I answered everybody's questions, but, it's, did you
Yes,
have?
I do.
Well, we don't want to plan on getting divorced anyway.
Been there, done that.
Well, I have a book here, I'm gonna give you my book now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, and maybe keep a
That
few
was
copies.
interesting.
Yes, so if anyone missed the program, talking to my Facebook Live audience, we'll keep a few copies here. You can contact me, Lisa Kelly, at the library if you'd like to pick up a copy. Thank you,
Perfect.
Michael, thank you so much.
Thanks for
Thank you.
listening, I
It was very
appreciate it.
Thank you, and we'll put this up on YouTube also,
Oh, okay.
so it'll be available to view afterwards. So, thank you again for coming.
We
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
You're
Very
welcome.
informative. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. Well, thank you,
Perfect.
Michael.
Thanks,
Thank
Lisa, so
you.
much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was interesting.
Good.